Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic of It Came From the Network, WCW Saturday Night from August 22nd, 1992. Now I totally randomized and got this event off of Peacock, which formerly was WWE Network. This is where we review the weird, the wacky, the good, the bad, the sometimes fun, sometimes terrible things you can find on the Peacock channel, formerly WWE Network. If you haven't seen my shows before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right in. The first match of the show, we have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Scotty Flamingo. And if you're not familiar with the name Scotty Flamingo, you may know him better by his future gimmick, Raven. This was a really cool match, a really cool opener. Scotty Flamingo was someone they were promoting at the time. They had a precursor to the Cruiserweight Championship, the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship, and he was a guy that was in the mix for the Light Heavyweight Championship. So it was kind of cool. I was a little bit worried when I got this at random that it would be nothing but squash matches. But kind of cool seeing essentially a high card talent versus a mid card talent here. I thought this was a great match. I liked how it started the show. Scotty Flamingo, even though Raven is the more popular of his characters, Scotty Flamingo, Johnny Polo, which are very similar, are also great characters. I think he had something there, even if he would have stayed with this. Of course, transitioning to Raven really made his career, but I don't think that this was a bad run when he was Scotty Flamingo. Steamboat picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 4, a great way to open the show. And Michael Hayes is on commentary for this with Jim Ross to start. That'll come into play here in a moment, because after that we get an interview with Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack then joins the commentary team with Jim Ross, which goes to be the theme running through the night that someone's going to sit in with Jim Ross on basically every match. He's on commentary for Jake the Snake Roberts versus a very young Marcus Alexander Bagwell, pre-Buff Bagwell. So we're starting to see a theme of guys that are established main event talents against younger guys that would be the future of wrestling in just 2, 3, 5 years later. You would see these Raven, Buff Bagwell. We're going to talk about another guy later in the show. We would see them go on to be bigger than what they were here. Again, another match where Buff was a lower card talent, but he was being billed as something. He was being billed as like a quasi-super rookie. This was another solid match, and I really enjoy the psychology of Jake the Snake Roberts matches, and I know that's not a revelation. Everybody talks about how the psychology of Jake's matches is above what most people can do. Jake picks up the win here. I'm giving this match a 4. Again, it was really solid, really enjoyable for me. Next up, we had what was to be a recap, but it was basically several minutes of a match from a house show where Rick Rude wrestled Nikita Koloff for the U.S. Championship. They play it and say it's going to be a recap, but again, it played about 7-8 minutes, so I'm going to mark it as a match and review it as such, even though it's incomplete. The story of the match, and this was a great match as well, is Medusa is barred from ringside. We see the match going on. We see a security guard kick Nikita in the head when he's leaning over the ropes while Rick Rude has the ref distracted. You don't automatically notice it, but then they show closer video of her, and you realize it is Medusa. Rude picks up the win on this. I thought this was a great segment. It's kind of an old trope, the barred from ringside and coming down to help anyway in a disguise, but it worked. I enjoy Rick Rude. It is kind of weird, and I know at this point it had been several years that Nikita was a face, and I know, and I watched, and I remember Nikita Koloff being a face. It's not that at all. In my brain, when I think Nikita Koloff, I think Nikita and Ivan Koloff as the Russians as heels. Just like I know, say for instance, that Rick Rude has been a face at points. I remember Rick Rude as a heel at all times. So it's anytime I see face Nikita Koloff, it's kind of weird to me, even though it's something I know happened. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if there's wrestlers like that for you. Like, is it weird seeing someone like Jimmy Snuka as a heel after he'd been portrayed as a babyface most of his career? Kind of the similar thing is what I think here. Now, coming from that, we have Dick Slater and Greg Valentine, who I forgot teamed together, going up against enhancement talent of Chris Sullivan and T.C. Carter. This is a match to get Sullivan and Valentine, basically on the show. Two guys who had name value for the show. Two guys that had been stars for the decade, if not more, before. This was an okay match, not as good as the first two. Of course, Slater and Valentine pick up the win on this. I'm giving this one a 3. Thought it was good. Not anything really to write home about. It's your basic get the squash, get your main stars over kind of thing. Next up, we have Ron Simmons on commentary. Ron Simmons does an interview and then joins commentary for Big Van Vader versus the Italian Stallion, which we're going to see Ron Simmons and Vader at Clash of the Champions coming up is the story behind that. Ron had recently won a WCW Championship from Vader. And this is a cool match. Obviously, Italian Stallion is a jobber, if you know anything about him. I don't really like saying he was a jobber, because he was a good wrestler. There's a reason why he had several years working as an enhancement talent, just like Steve Lombardi, just like Barry Horowitz, George South. These guys were great wrestlers, and they made the star look better. This was an absolute bulldozing by the Big Van Vader, and the Italian Stallion made Vader look everything as much as Vader could. The more impressive you make Vader look, the better job he did. This is absolutely awesome. Vader mauled him, gets a win. I'm giving this a 5. I love Vader in the destructive role. I love Vader being basically an imposing, dominating force. So to me, this was great, and I loved every part of it. Even though it was just an enhancement match, which generally I'm not too fond of. We close out the show with Sting, still in full surfer gear, versus Mark Canterbury, which, if you remember, I mentioned Scotty Flamingo and Marcus Alexander Bagwell earlier, going on to be more successful later. Mark Canterbury would become Henry Godwinn. Now, Henry Godwinn arguably didn't get to the levels that Bagwell or Raven did, but he still had a solid run as a WWE Tag Champion, as a WWE performer. So yeah, it's still something. He still went on to become more than he was here, and I'm guessing this was he was very young in his career here, so he was just trying to get on TV any way he could. This was another really fun match. Sting hit all of the Sting offense here, and I've heard a lot of people talk about Sting and how he never had good matches unless it was Ric Flair. That is utter bullshit. That is nonsense. Go back and watch Sting's matches. Sting was good on his own. Don't get me wrong. Ric Flair makes every wrestler he's in the ring with better. Ric Flair makes Shawn Michaels better. Ric Flair makes Bret Hart better. Ric Flair definitely made Sting better being in the ring with him. However, Sting did not need Ric Flair to make him look like a great wrestler. He is a great wrestler with great chemistry with most of his opponents. He had great connection to the fans. Everybody loves Sting. To me, I think Sting, when I think of Sting, I think of Surfer Sting, much like I said with Nikita. And I love this era of Sting. I was all in for it. I was cheering the night he finally won the championship from Flair. I thought he needed everything. To me, he was a great talent and a great wrestler. Again, just a little sidebar. Obviously, Sting picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 5. Afterwards, Sting does an interview, and that's another thing that people say. Sting's not a great interview. Sting did a hell of an interview on this show. Like I said, I think people go back and paint over Sting and think of him as lesser than what he actually was. And I hate that narrative because I think Sting is one of the greats of all time, in my opinion. Overall, I'm going to give this show a 5. I thought it was thoroughly entertaining, lots of fun. We got to see a lot of really great talent here. Ricky Steamboat, Raven, Cactus Jack, Jake the Snake Roberts, Buff Bagwell, Rick Rude, Nikita Koloff, Dick Slater, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Ron Simmons, Big Van Vader, Sting. I mean, the star power in this hour and what these guys would have. I mean, if you think about it, you got Vader was a former world champion. Steamboat's a former world champion. Sting's a world champion. Cactus Jack became a world champion. Raven became an ECW world champion and NWA champion later. Slater and Valentine are absolute legends. Nikita's an absolute legend. So the star power on this show was off the charts. For it just being something I randomly picked, I was very happy that I got this. Again, giving the show altogether a 5. With that being said, please hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't. And if you made it all the way to the end, let's put Henry Godwin in the comments for the respect for Henry Godwin, who I didn't mention there as being a major star, but yeah, he was a big part of WWE in the 90s, in the mid-90s, so we'll put him on there for the respect of him. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of It Came From the Network.